everyone, Blue Star Saber here with Retrospect Greg, as for once, we're not talking about, Naruto.
Thank God.
We're not talking about One Piece.
Not okay. Well, that's a good thing. So
Yeah. But instead, we're talking about Star Wars. The biggest movie franchise of all time.
yeah, I'd argue it still is compared to the MCU because the MCU has more films, but that's an adaptation of a comic book, so
Yeah.
you could put that on a different level.
But yeah, pretty much, yeah. There's arguably the MCU is the best-selling, highest grossing film
So,
series of.
I mean, look, when you have as many films as they do, it's not really.
Yeah, now it could be argued if Star Wars has had many films as they did, it'd probably be the highest grossing. But let's see.
Oh
But
yeah, well, that's the thing. Star Wars, there's arguably too much of it. It's oversaturated these days.
yeah. But anyway, we're not to talk about the current state of Star Wars. Instead, we're talking about perhaps the 25th anniversary of perhaps, let's see, what the most hyped up Star Wars movie of all time, and perhaps the most anticipated, and perhaps the most, let's see, base breaking movie of all time. Episode
Yeah.
1, The Phantom Menace.
I can safely tell you, I was 11 when this movie was coming out, and I remember it was people were in line to see it months before it even came out. That's how hyped people were.
Yes, The Phantom Menace. In many ways, it was a movie event like no other.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, pretty much the history of this movie. Let's see. Ever since Star Wars first came out and became a big hit, people were waiting for the next movie, or if they were wondering if there is going to be a next movie. And eventually, I think George Lucas revealed to the public that he intended the Star Wars saga to be either a 12-part saga or a 9-part saga, depending on what time he was saying it or when his personal life was going on.
Always changes that story.
Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah. In many ways, let's see. He pretty much said that the current trilogy, the original, was supposed to be the adventures of Luke Skywalker. Let's see. The prequel. Let's see. The films before would be the origins of like Obi-Wan Kenobi and his father, and then depending on how he was going to do about this, depending on what it was like for which number of sequels he's going to have, it was like the 12 sequels. It was either going to be the next one would be Luke and his sister. And then after that, it'll be like the children and students of Luke Skywalker. Or, let's see, or when it came to 9-part saga, it would pretty much be like, let's see, that would be the one with the grandchildren and the children of Luke Skywalker, pretty much.
I understand. Lucas went pretty back and forth on whether or not he was actually going to do sequels.
Yes, that ended up being the case, especially, I think, after his personal life, particularly his married life with his wife at the time, led to a very messy divorce.
Oh yeah, well, that among other reasons, because there was multiple reasons why Lucas decided to stop Star Wars early.
Yeah, but I believe that was one of the reasons. But yeah. But I think it's also the fact that he couldn't really get any of his pals to direct the film since they were part of the Film Directors Guild.
Oh yeah,
they pretty much booted him out because I think he refused to have film directors' credentials in the front of the film rather than the back.
yeah.
It's amazing how such a very silly little rule perhaps shaped and changed how the Star Wars saga could have been, in a sense.
Oh yeah, I mean he was very I mean, I think, well, when they made the first film, they probably didn't know if they were going to get any sequels because that was how it worked back then. It was like, yeah, you got one movie, but it was like, are you going to get more? Who knows?
I believe he prepared for a possible smaller, cheaper sequel in which you had the first EU Expanded Universe novel, The Splinter of the Mind's Eye, just in case. But, of course, Star Wars became the big hit that it was. And as a result, in The Empire Strikes Back, which arguably is the film that has defined the Star Wars saga, let's see, even to this day in some ways. as that changed the relation between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, as it became one of the same bloodline.
Oh yeah, that wasn't the case in the original film.
No, but
like, because people go, "Hey, why does Obi-Wan call him Darth?" Well, that's because at the time they made that movie, he wasn't Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, he was pretty much. They were pretty much two separate characters. You can even see it in the Star Wars comic that was, adapted from like George Lucas's original script.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see. So you pretty much got like that history, but yeah, it looked like for the longest time George wasn't going to do the sequel trilogy. It's like if you figured like after wrapping up the way he did with Return of the Jedi, you'd think like, okay, there was never going to be any sequels. But he was always interested in doing a possibility of a prequel trilogy.
Well, yeah, and because I think when he added Episode 4 to the original movie, it was like, oh, so there were 3 movies before this.
Yeah, so it's at the very least, let's see, there's going to be a backstory for like a Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and I believe he said that R2 and 3PO were going to appear in all the Star Wars movies in the Skywalker saga.
Yeah. One of his ideas for the Skywalker saga ending would have been that the whole story was being told by R2.
Oh, yeah. R2 was supposed to be sort of like recording it and then presenting it to the Journal of the Willis. These are sort of like entities who I think are connected to the Force, I believe.
Yeah. Still, I wonder if he had actually made 7, 8, 9 instead of, whoever, Disney or whatever. It's like, who knows how things would have been different.
Let's see. From my understanding, there are 2 ideas that he at least had. Now, one was to explore the origins of the Willis and, the origins of the Force a bit, and perhaps maybe a bit more of the spiritual aspects, but also the micro aspect of the Force, which I think he talked about with James Cameron. Granted, this is the one he said that he probably thinks fans would have hated.
Well, getting ahead of ourselves, yeah, they hated the midi-chlorians explanation in this movie.
Oh yeah, they it was not an explanation that they liked, or at the very least, though interesting enough, I hear when George Lucas ends up having an hour-long discussion with people about the midi-chlorians, they end up either liking it or understanding it a bit better.
Yeah,
I think that happened with Seth Green.
I think that's the problem. He didn't convey it too well in this movie.
No, and as a result of the backlash, ignored it for one, and then waited until Darth Plagueis came along.
Yeah, I think the problem is because I think that's another thing. Like, Qui-Gon is supposed to be a renegade Jedi, but that's not conveyed very effectively in the film, in my opinion.
Fair enough, but we'll get to the opinions to the films later. But basically, that was the sort of behind the pre-plans of the prequels. Possibility, but not yet. But there's also the fact that Star Wars was a bit waning in interest for a while until the expanded universe kicked off with the.
Oh yeah, the expanded universe kept Star Wars alive in the public conscious for a while.
Yeah, particularly the Thrawn trilogy, which was for many people the closest we're ever going to get to a sequel trilogy.
Yeah. So I guess we'll talk real quick about the production of this movie. This was the last time Lucas actually, did real practical effects for, or at least had actual sets, considering, episode 2 and 3, he went all digital.
Arguably, yes, but we'll get that to a bit. But speaking of digital, when Spielberg's Jurassic Park became a hit, Lucas now realized that the technology was there to create his film. So he did a little practice with the special editions, which came out for the 20th anniversary.
I remember my dad took me to see those movies. He said it was just as packed 20 years ago.
So in many ways, it was proof that Star Wars was still a hit, and Lucas, to some extent, knew what he was doing, as I believe some people thought, are you crazy? Releasing the films again in special editions 20 years later? Who'd pay to see it? Well, quite a fair share of people.
Well, they were very limited releases. I think they were only out for 2 weeks.
Fair enough. So it's Yeah, and I think it resulted in the let's see, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi making quite a fair share of money. As I think they let's see, the New Hope at the time when it was released made about 400 million. Now it's like 700 million in the box office as a result.
Well,
So
I think it's like over $1 billion nowadays because of the.
yeah, if you adjust it for infiltration, it'd be like 3 billion or something.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
second only the Gone with the Wind in terms of box office.
Oh yeah, let's see, and maybe Avatar I think might be a bit of a contender, but yeah. But basically, once it was announced, let's see there would be a new Star Wars movie. You got fans hyped, theories and discussions. What was going to be the title? One title I believe George was thinking was The Beginning, or so it's like, oh, this is like the beginning of the Star Wars saga. But eventually he decided on the name The Phantom Menace. But from my understanding, that name was drawn a bit of confusion at the time because they did not know what that meant or something.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to refer to the Sith, like Palpatine. And...
Yeah, I think years later people get, oh, all right, the hidden Sith, the hidden enemy, let's see, Palpatine, Darth Maul, you know.
Yeah. I think the original idea was that it was just going to start with Obi-Wan and Anakin as already master and pupil, but then he decided to do the basic origin with Anakin as a kid.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, because let's see. At the very least, one thing that was consistent is that he wanted Palpatine to be a politician.
Oh,
he compared him to Richard Nixon.
Oh, yeah. Star Wars has always been political. People don't.
Yeah. Despite what you might get some reactions like, oh, it's become too political nowadays.
It's like always been political.
Yeah, the undertones were there. I think he pretty much had, I think George could say the rebels were the Vietnam and the Empire was like America.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's always been there. Let's see, a powerful empire, let's see, being defeated by a more primitive rebel force.
Yep.
Let's see, some might not like that, but that's pretty much true. So, at the very least, that origin's there. Granted, Palpatine was, let's see, the Emperor was originally supposed to be a figurehead controlled by the Sith, but then, of course, they merged it to create Palpatine, and then, voila. We got a wonderful form of
the original in A New Hope, but like very briefly.
Yeah, that was like very briefly. At the very least, but yeah, he was only mentioned briefly, but yeah. So that was pretty much the remaining consistency, but yeah. Now, I believe the reason why George decided to make Anakin Skywalker, let's see, a young boy is because I think he wanted to make a very emotional goodbye with, like, Anakin and his mother, which arguably I'd say is one of the highlights of the
film. Yeah, also, he thought about doing, like, Anakin being, like, rescued from being a slave as, like, a flashback, but he was like, I don't think flashbacks belong in Star Wars, which makes me laugh compared to how it's done today.
Oh yeah, because Disney has quite the habit of doing flashbacks in Star Wars. Heck, let's see, ever since the Last
Jedi,
yeah, particularly the Last Jedi, which
he didn't think flashbacks belonged in Star Wars, or that's what I hear. This is a video I watched a little while ago, but that's where I got that from. I assume that's true, but
let's see. Who knows? I'm not sure. Granted, that may have had a bit of an impact on the film as a result, since he was playing for Padme Amidala to eventually be with the mother of Luke and Leia.
Oh yeah,
that she had to be a bit younger than what was probably intended for the elected Queen of Naboo.
Yeah, that's the thing. She's apparently 14 in this movie, but she doesn't look it because Natalie Portman was much older than that when they filmed that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I will admit. Let's see. I did kind of notice when rewatching the film, but yeah. Now, arguably, which is arguably one of the things that when people said how they would rewrite the Phantom Menace, they'd at least make Anakin slightly older, arguably around the age of 12 or 13, since that's still technically young, and also, as George Lucas says, that's the sort of demographic Star Wars is for.
And also, that's when you start to get interested in the opposite sex.
Yeah, arguably that as well. But basically he had a name, let's see, and then people started waiting for like more news on the film. But as a result, when the trailer first came out, well, the internet was not really a thing at the time, or at least it was
it was infancy, I'd say.
Yeah, just in its early stages. It's not like how trailers are done like today, where
No,
comes out.
Went to see a movie just to see the trailer and left.
Yeah, that was pretty much what Star Wars fans did. It's kind of like maddening because I think that has never happened with other films.
It doesn't happen today because you can just watch the trailer on YouTube now.
Yeah, but it was like
do that back then.
Yeah, they did, especially for the Phantom Menace, and that I'm not sure if that meant that a lot of films owed a bit of their money to like to the hype that was the Phantom Menace at the time.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So what I want to go into, it's like I'm speaking for myself as like an 11-year-old kid because I was like, I was big on Star Wars. I was 11, so I was kind of at that age because I had seen the original trilogy. Like my parents had shown me like the videos of it, and then when I went to see Star Wars, it was like, as a kid, you're just eating it up. It's like, oh, it's new Star Wars, cool. And then it was like, but apparently all the adults who grew up with the original trilogy were like. They weren't saying anything because they didn't want to upset their kids, but they were like, I didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, we'll get a bit more to that later, but so far the marketing was pretty much effective, particularly with the trailer, and eventually the marketing of the film. Let's see, basically it was like perhaps the biggest marketing campaign you've probably ever seen for a movie, particularly Star Wars. I think
was based on because it's going to be the start of the story of how Anakin became Darth Vader. That was what the whole prequel trilogy ran on. Was that you knew Anakin was going to become Darth Vader?
Oh yeah, let's see. Yeah, that arguably helped, but also I think a bit of merchandising of like the sort of Sith Lord that was being introduced at the time, who many thought would be the Darth Vader of like the prequel. Trilogy, as I'm just going to share a screen of like this image I found on the on the Google. This one here, let's see, the Phantom Menace sort of merchandise. Let's see.
If I remember correctly, the episode 1 toys were a little Hasbro had some problems with those, which is one of the reasons why they ended Beast Machines early.
Okay, is it because they had so many? Because they had so many toys they needed to make for the Phantom Menace.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Star Wars has kind of always been about selling toys.
Yeah, arguably it's the franchise that started the merchandising for films. Heck, I believe. Well, at least I'm not sure if this is the case now, but when let's see, I believe at the very least the original trilogy and maybe the prequel trilogy is that the merchandise would make 3 times the amount the films did. At least I think that was the case with that. And let's see. Now, granted, some of the merchandise went a bit extreme, like with this Jar Jar Binks popsicle, as you can see here.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, they put Star Wars on anything. That's how big it was.
Yeah, I think from what I could see, there were like Pepsi machines vending and all that stuff, and I believe there were like 9 video games just based around the Phantom Menace. Either like one in the story itself, one on pod racing, the Battle of Naboo, all kinds of video games.
I think I rented that Star Wars Episode 1 pod racing game for Nintendo 64 as a kid a bunch of times.
Ah, yes. So, basically, it was pretty much everywhere. You could not really probably escape this film. And as a result, like you said, I think early in the stream, you had people lining up for like months. Let's see, before even the film is out. I think, I've forgotten the exact number, but I think about at least 800 million working hours for like America the day that the Phantom Menace came out. Pretty much was lost because a lot of their employees at the time took the day off just to go see the movie.
Oh yeah, I forget what I saw it exactly, but it was somewhere around there. It was like Dad. Dad was always dad's usually really busy in like May, so he didn't really have time to go see a movie. But I begged him, was like, "Come on, we got to go see this." He was like, all right, we'll go."
Yeah, but yeah, basically, from my understanding, George was very determined to try and get this movie to be out, let's see, worldwide on the same day, including, I think, for the first time in China, as they never really got a chance to see the original trilogy films, which arguably, as a result, they never really got the nostalgia that many other places did have for Star Wars. So they never really got to be big in China, despite Disney's struggles to do so with the sequel trilogy later.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, nothing you can really do about that.
Yeah, so I guess it goes to show you that sometimes, let's see, might be arguments for some saying that Star Wars is only relevant because of the nostalgia it has, if you use like the China example. But yeah, so basically, all this marketing hype, all this excitement, people got to see the film, and well, as you probably mentioned, there was a rather mixed response.
Yeah.
Let's see, kids and young people pretty much ended up, for the most part, liking the film, enjoying like
Oh yeah.
action, let's see, the colorful worlds, and even some of the funny characters like Jar Jar. But the adults were more mixed.
Yeah. No, I think Jar Jar was universally hated by older fans.
Ah, yes, in many ways. Let's see, Jar Jar's like, let's see, for the German, let's see, trope, he was used as the scrappy. But
yeah. Because Jar Jar had a rather annoying way of speaking, and there is some unfortunate racist characters in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, let's see. I'll get to that in a second. I'm just gonna just want to share screen as we can on stars. No, not that one. See, where did I? Star Wars the film. I'll share here on. As we can see here from IMBD and Rotten Tomatoes, and also I guess let's see, Metric. It was rather mixed response to the film. Now, granted, as you can probably see with like Google and Amazon UK, a bit more positive in later down the line. But at the time, as we can see from like let's see, Rotten Tomatoes here, fans were rather divided as a result. Let's see. Now, Jar Jar was one of them. Accusations, of course, being a stereotype. Also, I believe the Trade Federation's Nimedonians were accused of stereotype, and even for like Asians, I believe. And Watto was accused of being a Jewish stereotype. Of course, George Lucas has denied that any of these characters were based on racial stereotypes.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, of course he will.
Yeah, and that was not an intention, but yeah, arguably, yeah, Jar Jar was arguably the center of the negative reaction.
Oh yeah, because he was just supposed to be like, he was supposed to be pure comic relief, and Star Wars never really had a character like that before.
Yeah, arguably, you did have the comedic duo of let's see, R2 and 3PO. And also you had more of the silly aliens with like the Ewoks, but for many people this was to the extreme, to the 11. But unfortunately that reaction also had some rather negative consequences to like particularly the actor who played Jar Jar, Ahmed Best, who thought would be that this character would be his big breaking point. As I believe, let's see, unfortunately the backlash was pretty strong that I think at the time that at one point, he considered suicide, I think.
Yeah, let's just say the Star Wars fandom has always been kind of toxic.
Yeah, and let's see. But I think, of course, it's toned down a bit, but particularly with that, I mean, the most famous example was probably one of the most infamous celebrity prequel bashers, Simon Pegg, who, really hated that, that film. I think he even did like a episode on his like show at the time, Spaced, where he pretty much had his character shouting at a little boy for wanting to buy a Jar Jar toy at the comic book shop. And result of him getting fired as a result of that. But yeah. But so But eventually, when he heard that with Ahmed Best, he was like, "Oh shit! Let's see, that's good. Let's see, perhaps we have taken this too far." So he's toned. So you've gotten like a toned down for that, which is a bit of a shame because, but in many ways, Jar Jar was a bit of a breakthrough in terms of like film technology because he was like, I believe, the very first fully animated CGI character that an actor could like portray as and all that. In many ways, it was like the sort of the stepping stones that eventually lead to characters like Gollum in Lord of the Rings, Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean, and I guess you could even argue Thanos from like the MCU. But yeah. Of course, many kids today still like Jar Jar, including, I think, Ahmed Best's own son, which is probably the praise that he wants more than anything else in the world, from my understanding. And he eventually got to play some other roles in like Star Wars, particularly like a Jedi Master in this really live action, this real life challenge TV show, which eventually the character got to be in the Mandalorian season 3, revealing him to be the Jedi that rescued Grogu from
Hello.
66.
Hello, Brandon.
Hello, Brandon Attendant, or should I say, General Brandon Tran.
Yeah,
I think this guy
character is your avatar.
Yeah, I pretty much I think as this guy pretty much whenever I do a Star Wars stream does the famous Obi-Wan hello there meme. I always do like General Brandon Tran, just like how Grievous responds. But yeah. So basically, that was practically the backlash where like Ahmed Best got, but you also had like the backlash I think Jake Lloyd got for his portrayal of Anakin Skywalker, which also didn't help when he is also new to your channel, but you guys are talking about the pros and cons of the Phantom Menace. Oh, sorry, I must have mistaken you for someone else then, Brandon Tran. Sorry about that. Let's see, I have someone else that says hello there, but at the moment, the stream is pretty much talking about the sort of unique history of the Phantom Menace. Its pre-production years, like the initial plannings, the marketing hype, the film reactions. I suppose, arguably, we will probably be talking about the pros and cons, but I guess we're just currently talking about the mixed reactions.
Yeah. Well, also, I remember, I remember seeing an episode of The Simpsons where this was after Attack of the Clones came out, but before Revenge of the Sith came out.
Oh, yeah.
And like they were like Lenny and Carl were having like a lightsaber duel. They were like, "I say Phantom Menace sucked more. I say Attack of the Clones sucked more." It was like, yeah,
oh yeah. You kind of had like in pop culture, you pretty much had many shows, TVs make fun of the Phantom Menace's reputation at the time. South Park made an episode where they created characters based on their frustrations on Jar Jar.
Yeah, actually, one thing I remember, I used to watch that 70s show, and like the main character, Eric, was a big Star Wars fan because he saw it when it first came out. And I know they did a sequel series called The 90s Show. If they ever get enough episodes to get to when Phantom Menace comes out, I want to see his reaction to that movie.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll be similar to what adults felt at the time, or will they do more of like be one of those guys who secretly liked the Phantom Menace? But yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be funny if like it just like and it cuts to credits and he's like, "What the fuck was that?"
Let's see. Who knows? That might be a possibility, but yeah. But yeah, he also I think had Fairy Odd Parents with like a Jitsi had Jar Jar parody briefly in when you had them enacting Star Wars being kicked off. But basically, yeah, Jar Jar was pretty much the center. But then, of course, there was like some criticism at Jake Lloyd, which eventually
like I said, unfortunately, toxic attitude towards actors. Like, yeah, people can't separate fiction from reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, and not to mention the bullying he received as a child eventually resulted in quitting acting.
Yeah,
like some problems down the line.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad story, really.
Yeah. It's really a shame. Also, I think you also got some very personal attacks against George Lucas himself because, well, he was pretty much behind everything: the directing,
Yeah.
the story, the production.
Well,
marketing.
say this. I think the fan base is the reason he sold the franchise, which
Yeah,
in that regard, I don't blame him.
yeah. He said, I think he pretty much said, "Why would I make any more when everyone always yells at you and all the time saying how much of a horrible person?" I think the most extreme cases were when some people accused him of raping their childhood.
Oh God. Yeah, like even like you probably are familiar with the red letter media critiques of the prequel.
Oh yes. If
Like,
you were a prequel fan, you heard that very often.
yeah. Well, I think one of the things he said was like, he didn't ruin my childhood. More like he disappointed my adulthood.
Yeah, but yeah, basically, you had pretty much Star Wars fans at the time going from George Lucas, the city holy god, and all that stuff, become like George Lucas, the devil, the Antichrist,
Yeah.
depending on how you view it. Resulted in all kinds of like backlash. Let's see, one of them being like the Phantom edit. Let's see, the first sort of like edit, a fan edit of like Ritzy reimagined the film of like removing stuff that they thought was bad of the film and good. You got some people end up watching that and preferring that. Let's see, though, granted, let's see, that eventually caused some problems when people started paying for that instead of the actual film. But
Yeah.
Brandon Turner says, well, for the Phantom Menace back in 1999, not too many Star Wars fans enjoyed it, except for kids who grew up with the prequels. That is true. But yeah, it probably also didn't help that with that line with like the adulthood. It's probably one of the reasons why the Phantom Menace got the reaction it did, is that it was the first Star Wars movie in 16 years.
Oh yeah. It was like the origin movie. It was like,
Yeah.
I think really it's like this, like, so there was like, I mean, there's clearly moments that I think are like meant for like theater cheers, like when Obi-Wan and Anakin like stand up and like and then like when in the smoke you see their lightsabers turn on. That's clearly supposed to be like a theater cheer moment, I think. But it's just like yeah. So what's funny is the Phantom Menace had a lot of the same filming problems as the as A New Hope.
Probably, but yeah. But at least for some people, but yeah. But
Yeah.
where was I? What was I saying? I'm trying to remember the point. Okay, talk Jake Lloyd. Oh yeah, let's see. 16 years. Let's see. A lot of imagination ahead. A lot of marketing hype. Arguably, the original fans grown up. Let's see. George more thinking of more of younger fans at the time. Pretty much, I think, let's see, resulted in sort of like a probably be blown up beyond expectations that he would probably never deliver them in what, let's see, to the extent, though, granted, as a result of it being a Star Wars movie, the reactions were probably a lot more negative than they probably would have been for other disappointing fourth films, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
As fourth films do have a reputation of being like the weakest or the most disappointing.
Oh, yeah.
This was like Star Wars.
No, I think there's a moment in X-Men, what was it, Apocalypse? Where they go see Return of the Jedi, and they're like, I think we can all agree the third one is always the worst. It's like, and because that one was pretty bad, people were like, yeah, you played yourself there. And then, because it was Superman and Batman movies, their original movies, it was like, yeah, they had a disappointing third one. And they basically, and the fourth one was just a pure abomination.
Yeah, but yeah, so arguably Apocalypse was trying to do a joke on the Phantom Menace expense, but it ended up being directed towards them.
Well, actually, it was around Return of the Jedi came out. They were seeing Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, but Brandon Town says, speaking of Jake Lloyd, surprisingly, he recently got back to Star Wars after he went to therapy to help him with his schizophrenia, and his mom got an Ahsoka action figure from the Ahsoka show. Oh, that is nice. Speaking of actors, unfortunately, let's see, James L. Jones recently passed away.
Yeah.
I think the day around the time when we were originally going to do this stream, but
yeah, that was kind of interesting timing.
Yeah, but yeah, rest in peace, James L. Jones.
Yeah, 93, pretty good life.
Yeah, and played 2 iconic dads in city fiction.
Well, he was in a lot of stuff. He was in I think it was in Field of Dreams. He was the author, and he was also he was the villain in Conan the Barbarian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that scene where where Conan confronts him, you killed my mother, you killed my father, you raided my village, you took my father's sword. And he's like, must have been when I was younger.
Oh yeah, that's just a Tuesday for me.
Yeah.
but yeah, I haven't really seen that film, but yeah, basically, let's see, Jake Lloyd got bullied, but I'm glad he's sorting out. But yeah, now let's see, there's also the controversy of the politics of the film, as people didn't quite understand about a trading blockade. Let's see, occupying a planet over some taxes, though. To be fair, I actually could see rich people and corporations doing that if they had their own private armies, to be honest. Let's see. I could actually see some rich people doing that.
Yeah.
Let's see. But which is why, hopefully, there's certain politicians I can think of in particular, but I'm not going to get into that. But so there was arguably some of the arguments of the politics of it, but let's see. Ironically enough, despite the film's reputation of having too much Senate meetings, the only time it was in the Senate was in the film. It only lasted 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, I think that two of the actors that disliked the film was the original voice of Darth Maul disliked it, and I believe the actor who played Chancellor Florin, who I believe was General Zod, who only did the film because he wanted to act with Natalie Portman, but their scenes weren't shot together, so he missed his chance to do that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I believe you did have Liam Neeson originally not liking the Phantom Menace, but I think over time he's warmed up to it, particularly the character Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah, I think for a while, Natalie Portman couldn't really talk about Star Wars for a while because she was
Yeah, and it was nearly ruined her career, but she does like the film and she has defended it. In fact, many of the actors you get from the film defend it, particularly.
That's kind of Ahmad, the actor of Jar Jar. He kind of embraced being hated.
Yeah, let's see. Particularly Ian McGregor and Liam Neeson and Natalie Portman can be defended. But yeah, the actor of Jar Jar dead, particularly with those robot chicken specials.
Oh, yeah, he embraced his status of being hated.
Oh yeah, and I think he even got an award for his performance in the robot chicken specials, which, funny enough, I think allowed Seth Green to realize, okay, there are actually fans of this character, which led to perhaps the funniest joke and perhaps one that eventually spawned one of the most popular theories of all time, the Darth Jar Jar theory.
Oh, yeah. I don't think they're ever actually going to do that, hopefully, but it's that's one thing that stay a fan.
Yeah. Let's see. I think they did it in a recent Lego special TV series or something. I think that's the closest you're going to get. Now, whether or not George Lucas was actually planning that or not, who knows?
I think he was. Although, yeah, it's funny how he kind of made Jar Jar the reason the Empire happened in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah. Some are wondering, is he going to be secretly Darth Plagueis? But who knows? But if perhaps Jar Jar's reaction wasn't as strong as it was, you probably might have, who knows, where would have seen.
Well, that's why he was his role was reduced to 2 and 3.
Yeah, but I do like the little jab that George has of having Jar Jar smiling in Attack of the Clones. It's I'm still here. But but yeah, and I think he even wrote the first original draft title for the Attack of the Clones as Jar Jar's Big Adventure. But besides the politics, like we probably mentioned earlier, the midichlorians were arguably one of the most controversial aspects, as being the sort of an origin or explanation for the Force, or why certain individuals could use the Force more, or at least had more potential in the Force.
Yeah, I think really that was the problem. Is that it just wasn't conveyed too well what he was trying to do. I think if he had conveyed it better, the reaction would have been different.
I believe so, because I think I'm not sure if I mentioned this. I did mention this before the stream. Is that let's see. I believe when he talked to like Seth Green for like an hour long about metachlorines, apparently he understood it and is like, okay, that makes sense. Brandon Tan says, I don't know if you've seen Disney Plus Star Wars show, The Acolyte, but did you know being called the worst Star Wars to exist, like Disney's sequel trilogy,
Yeah,
half the fan base.
For that.
Yeah, I've reviewed each of the episodes of The Acolyte. Said some positive things, said some negative things, but and even talked about its cancellation. But arguably, it's not a show I'm too fussed about, though. I will admit, I will.
Here's the thing: when you get bad reviews or whatever it was, it's like, yeah, you're gonna get canceled. And also when you don't get good ratings, which I hear it didn't. That's what, you're gonna get canceled. That's just how it works.
Arguably, it's probably the first Star Wars show to fail in that regard. That was supposed to have more than one season.
Yeah, because Obi-Wan wasn't supposed to have more than one season. At least I hope not.
Yeah, though I think Ian McGregor's expressed interest in continuing to play as the character.
Yeah, I'd be down for that because I do love Ewan in the role, but I must admit the actual show was not very good because I remember seeing the first episode, the chase scene where they chase Leia through the woods. I was like, how did they get past editing?
I think me and Lucky Chi had a bit of a more of a fanboying moments that we gave nearly every episode, minus I believe the fourth one. Let's see, positive reviews. But I don't know, if I watch it now, I might see some flaws. But arguably, it probably should have been a TV miniseries that should have been a film because it's like
it was
McGregor's Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. That's going to give you like $1 billion.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Phantom Menace. I think really what problem was, it was just like, I think really the character of Qui-Gon was also a little divisive because it was like...
he was not mentioned in the original trilogy.
Well, yeah, also I think it was just a mix of like, the intention behind him was that he was supposed to be like a renegade Jedi. Like he didn't always listen to the council. He went against them.
Yeah.
But,
in some ways, I think some compared him to being like what was supposed to be the actual ideal Jedi.
Yeah, it was like it just wasn't conveyed as effectively as it should have been, I feel.
Yeah. Though, granted, I think reputation to Qui-Gon Jinn has become softened over time and has become one of the more favorite of like the Star Wars characters.
Oh yeah, well, like here's the thing. I think because that's why that duel with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul has Duel of the Fates playing, because if Qui-Gon had won, Anakin wouldn't have turned to the dark side.
Oh yeah, Dave Filoni pretty much mentioned that. In many ways, Dave Filoni has also managed to help people understand, like, I guess, the Phantom Menace and other prequel films a bit better. I think he also made a bit more clear with, like, one episode of Ahsoka where explaining everyone can use the Force. It's just that there's those that have more potential of it that, for the average person, it takes a bit more longer time. That was the whole point with Sabine. Or may not be as strong as, say, someone like Anakin Skywalker. But, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Also, I think, this is when he started to make Anakin into basically Space Jesus with, like, where it's like, there was no father, I just gave birth to him.
Oh, yeah. There was also, I suppose, some backlash to the idea of, like, Anakin being a chosen one, but I think there were definitely some Christian groups that did not like Anakin being a sort of, like, compared to, like, Jesus, if you will.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lucas was definitely going for that with that parallel, with that analog. Yeah.
Let's see. So,
there was no father, I just gave birth to him.
Yeah. So I can't really blame Qui-Gon for thinking that he was some chosen one figure. Arguably, I feel like George probably should have gone more delve into what the actual prophecy was, but he's made it a bit vague.
Well, yeah, also, a lot of people were confused because there was like things that didn't match up with like the original trilogy. Like, isn't Anakin supposed to have a brother? But they were like, well, they did explain that in episode 2. So
yeah. And like, was Yoda supposed to be training Obi-Wan? So
they kind of explained that a little bit in episode 2, that where they showed Yoda like training like little young Jedi.
Yeah, So let's see. So arguably, some things, let's see, took a film or two to better explain. Okay, this is the plot. Which, arguably, in some ways, when you watch the whole trilogy of the prequel trilogy, you can kind of understand the story a
Like,
bit
I
better.
remember IMDb, Internet Movie Database, said, "Oh, you cannot put any like plot holes between this movie and the original trilogy because they may be explained in future movies."
Something like that, but yeah. Now, whether or not, let's see, you can argue that plot holes are just once you need explanation or better execution. That was debate, but yeah. But then of course you got Brandon Town says Disney style shows have been mixed. There's the good Mandalorian season 1 and 2, Andor and the Bad Batch, mid Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, Tales of the Jedi, and bad Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Acolyte. I'm pretty certain most people would agree with you with Mandalorian season 1 and 2 and Andor. Bad Batch, I think, will be a bit more mixed. Let's see, mid. Well, some might say that, though. I think some people say Book of Boba Fett is one of the worst shows.
Yeah, I don't think I even watched the last episode of that because I'm like, oh god, I can't do this.
Let's see. For me, I like the first 6 episodes well enough, but the 7th episode was a bit of a. I think was a bit of an anticlimactic.
No, because it's like I don't even think Boba Fett barely wore his iconic helmet throughout that show.
Yeah, and also he was absent for like 2 episodes, really.
Yeah, it was like they realized this isn't working. Let's do something else.
Yeah, let's see. Ahsoka, I think it's a bit more mixed reactions. Tales of the Jedi, from what I can tell, more positive when you go with the Count Dooku stories.
Yeah, I've not heard good things about Mandalorian season 3.
Oh yeah, I liked it when I first watched it, though I have not watched it since. I might change my mind then, but it might be I liked it more like individual episodes, but as a season overall, probably not the best. But I guess I'll do Star Wars TV shows and discussion another time. But I'll probably wait until the Skeleton Crew comes out. But anyway, but potentially, I think, like you said, Red Letter Media came out, and pretty much everyone who hated the Phantom Menace used its arguments to say why the film was bad.
Well, yeah, it's just a lot of the filmmaking arguments of those reviews, like, basically kind of applies to the MCU these days.
Yeah. Now, granted, I think there has let's see. So yeah, pretty much like let's see, use those arguments, and now, granted, I think of course there eventually came some backlash to those reviews. I think, or some of them feels like they're not really that strong arguments, or this feels more like something that you personally.
Somebody wrote like a 200-page response to it, which was pretty funny.
Oh yeah. There was also some at the time when the Phantom Menace was coming out and the prequel trilogies were being bashed, made some like sites to defend. The most famous one I can think of that I used to go to was the Star Wars Prequel Appreciation Society, where prequel fans could like express their love for like the prequel films.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, I think really what it was, like, I enjoyed the prequels, even though I admitted that, while they were coming out, because it was like, yeah, it's more Star Wars, but it was like, I didn't put them on par with the original trilogy, of course, but...
Yeah. No, I think you did say the Phantom Menace still sucked in your last review, though I'm not sure if you've changed your mind since then.
I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm not sure how I think it's just because it's just like... I think it's just like the Phantom Menace was just like, that's a pretty common perception about that. It was like, it just wasn't.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so I think we should probably get to that. Let's see, but even though films came out, you still got mixed response. But yeah, many kids did end up liking the films, and like you and me, this was like our generation's Star Wars.
Well, yeah, it was like... for the most part, yeah. That's why it was like, I think really, I have heard a lot of the problems people have with the prequels are kind of fleshed out in that Clone Wars show.
Oh, yes. Let's see. Things that probably eventually turned to more positive for the Phantom Menace was, of course, the Clone Wars, which was, the film came out 3 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Well, yeah, that should have been a theatrical movie because that was supposed to be a TV movie.
Yeah, that was supposed to be 4 episodes of a TV thing, but George thought those 4 episodes could make a movie, which arguably make a good TV pilot film. Maybe not so much as a cinematic, as a result is the most.
Lucas did make some dumb decisions. I won't deny that.
Yeah, arguably it did not really have the budget for like a see thing.
And that's because it was clearly not meant to be seen in theaters.
Yeah. I think if you watch it as a TV pilot, you enjoy it. As a cinematic movie, probably not so much.
Yeah. I remember, speaking of which, receptions, I remember the reception to Ahsoka was pretty negative in that movie, but she went on to become a beloved character.
Oh, yeah. In many ways, she's an example of how you can make a female character from hated to beloved.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I think also, like, Dave Filoni was also very prepared for that kind of reaction.
Because it's like, I think Roger Ebert said in his review that all she does is just prove herself right and prove her teacher wrong.
Yeah.
And I think really later on, it's like they show that, one of the reasons why Ahsoka, Anakin teaches Ahsoka his way, not the Jedi way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I didn't like how in Book of Boba Fett she's like, no attachments, because she, of all people, should have known that the way the Jedi did things was bullshit.
Yeah, it may be possible that Dave Filoni is still committed to what was the Jedi like in the prequels, or or the fact that they're still setting up for Luke to fail with the sequel trilogy.
They kind of moved themselves into a corner with that because J.J. Abrams doesn't know what to do other than just retell the same story.
Yeah. But who knows? Well, I'm thinking of doing a sequel trilogy thing 5 years later, but I'm going to probably rewatch the films and then have Lucky Chi join. But you're more than welcome to for that as well. But but back to the thing. But yeah, the Clone Wars arguably built up the reputation of the prequels, at least starting to. And eventually, of course, Darth Maul came back, who was killed off in the Phantom Menace.
Oh yeah, I actually think. What? Oh, what were you saying?
Go on. You go first.
I was saying I think Lucas kind of regretted killing him in the Phantom Menace.
Yes, and I think so I think that's what he said when he was bringing him back in season 4 of the Clone Wars. But I think one interesting thing is apparently one of Lucas's sequel trilogy plans was apparently to have Luke, rebuild the Jedi, Leia try and rebuild the Republic, but you had Darth Maul as the villain behind the scenes, controlling a criminal underworld, and having Darth Talon, a Twi'lek Sith Lord from the Legacy era of Star Wars EU comics, set 100 years after the films. Be his sort of Sith apprentice. They control the crime in the underworlds and the remnants of the Empire, trying to take over the galaxy with Leia and Luke with the new generation of Jedi and Republic. Take them down, and Leia eventually becoming the Chancellor and the new chosen one, if you will. Let's see. Now, granted, this might have been his idea at the time when he was still working on the prequels, or at least maybe later. I'm not sure, but either way, it might have been a mix. But at the very least, I do know he was very interested in Darth Talon. In fact, I'd say George Lucas has a bit of a Twi'lek fetish, if you will, as I think Ayla Secure, a EU comic character, became canon. And in the film, because he liked her design.
Who? Wait, what fetish?
A Twi'lek fetish. You know those ponytail aliens. Those
Oh, that okay.
Yeah. You know that Ayla Secure, that blue Jedi that got shot down by clones in Order 66.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She was a comic book character that George Lucas liked when he saw a cover of her, and then included her in the later two prequel films.
Yeah, and then killed.
Killed off. And then I think he also had an interest in making
the Order 66 or Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, that would have been much more impactful if you would actually, it's much more impactful if you had spent time with the other Jedis with the before between episode 2 and episode 3. If you have seen Clone Wars, that does become more impactful. But it's if you only seen the movies, it's going to be oh, I guess that sucks.
Yeah. Brandon, well, it worked for me as a kid, but anyway, Brandon Tan says, in the Clone Wars show, Ahsoka is an example of how to create a good written female character and develop compared to Rey, who had no character or flaws in the whole sequel trilogy. Fair enough. That is an example I've seen people use many times when comparing Rey and Ahsoka, but yeah, arguably the Clone Wars also made Order 66 a lot more popular. In fact, arguably, I think it's become one of the more iconic scenes in Star Wars, and one of the most backstory events that they've used in quite a lot of their modern Star Wars stories. In fact, I think I saw a YouTube channel that said that Order 66 is the most iconic or best scene in Star Wars, talking about all the multiple sort of media things that Order 66 has led to.
Well, I think
the fact that if you compare it to something like the Thanos snap, in which had half the cast die, but then they came back in the next film. But it's like Order 66 is more permanent.
Well, I think really the most iconic scene in Star Wars, I'd argue, is when Vader tells Luke he's his father.
Yeah, I think nothing's going to top that. It's arguably the most iconic twist of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah. But basically, the Clone Wars started to rehabilitate the ritzy Phantom Menace's reputation a little bit. Also bringing back like Darth Maul, like I said. And then, of course, had like it coming out in 3D, which I think it made, let's see, an extra 100 million or so, where it went from, 900 million to like 1 billion. Let's see. Interestingly, I think when the box office was talked about at the time for the Phantom Menace, people were wondering like, could it surpass Titanic because it was Star Wars?
Well, yeah,
enough.
Yeah, there's a behind the scenes of Lucas saying, "I doubt it."
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. George Lucas doubts it, as I think one of those reasons being that the Titanic was more of an original iconic film that started like a new phenomenon in a sense. And in some ways, you can kind of see that, given how Titanic was only eventually down the line surpassed by Avatar, actually a new original film, which many also compared to being like a sort of like the 2000s Star Wars, if you will.
Yep.
Let's see. Arguably, the only film that's managed to surpass that was Avengers Endgame, though eventually Avatar retook it when it had a re-release. But basically, it's the kind of like, so now you're going to probably have a bit of a fight between Endgame and Avatar for the highest grossing film. But basically, it's like as George is saying, like only a sort of like original event movie can become the highest grossing. Though granted, Endgame being a sort of a event of itself, the combination of 10 years of the biggest movies at the time, that was like one of the sole exceptions.
Yeah.
But let's see. Sorry, what?
I think we got to wrap this up soon.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just about to get to the final bit, but what arguably changed the Phantom Menace's reputation, probably for more positive, would be the events that happened after when it was announced that George Lucas would be selling the rights of Star Wars to Disney.
Yeah.
At the time when Disney were taking over, they were pretty much focused original trilogy nostalgia. We're going to ignore the prequels, which resulted in a sort of backlash with a lot of prequel fans, as many of them were starting to like grow up, or some of them were starting to like finally have their voice.
That was the problem with the sequels. They just kind of were like, "Oh, this is not the prequels." It's like, that was what they wanted to do, and yet I think that did more harm than good in the end.
Yeah, in many ways, they pretty much, particularly the Force Awakens, that was pretty much the anti-prequel marketing.
Like, look at this, we have practical effects. The
practical effects is like the one thing they emphasize so much, real sets and all that. And many people's like, this is a jab at the prequels, when the people argued like, oh, let's see, they were only just CGI and no model sets. So interesting enough, I think the Phantom Menace did more model sets than all of the original trilogy films combined.
Yeah.
So go on.
Yeah, I do think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the MCU films use a lot more CGI than all of the prequel films themselves.
Yeah, I think basically everything's CGI now in Marvel films. Like,
the
suits they wear are CGI, so it's like, oh, are they talking? Mask off. Oh, they're fighting. Mask on.
Yeah, so basically, that. So you got a little bit of a backlash. Also, the fact that the Clone Wars was cancelled. The only way you could really see some prequel appreciation was still with Dave Filoni, who understood that those fans existed and did some like prequel references in the Rebels show. One of them being Luminary Undie in like the first season of Rebels, and then eventually brought Clone Wars characters back in season 2. But I think let's see what mainly changed the reputation of the prequels for good was the release of the Last Jedi, in which in many ways the film received the response to that was perhaps the one film that was more divisive than the Phantom Menace was in the time of its release.
Oh god, but yeah, that's a story for another time, though.
But yeah, so arguably, but yeah, that film caused perhaps a bit of let's see.
That might have been the most divisive film in film history, honestly.
Yeah, and as a result, it ended up getting some people, maybe even some of the haters of the Phantom Menace, saying, "You know what, this film is not so bad," or "You know what, there's at least some decent elements of it at the very least."
And then Rise of Skywalker came out, and nobody liked that.
Oh yeah, and in fact, I think it's the one film that's either got more negative reviews than the Phantom Menace when it comes to critics, or just about the same.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you don't have a plan for a sequel trilogy.
Yeah, they probably should have stuck with like the drafts that George Lucas had.
Yeah, or rather, I think the problem was they just rushed them out too fast. It was like, no, you should have waited a little bit to get the story right.
Yeah, that and also got on like a consistent director.
Yeah.
Or visionary. But yeah. So basically with the let's see, sequel trilogy then starting to like divide Star Wars fans. You had the new young prequel fans finally growing up, having a voice and expressing their love for the Phantom Menace. And also maybe some fans of the like they originally hated it. You know what? I can actually appreciate some stuff from this film. And as a result, let's see, you got a bit more positively talked about that. I think Disney started bringing perhaps a few more prequel or even Clone Wars reference in their Star Wars media. Granted, that could also be the fact that Dave Filoni is
involved. The Old show is kind of built on prequel nostalgia, basically.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
I think the one show kind of runs on prequel nostalgia.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the factors, but it's like no, arguably it's the no, yeah, actually, though, granted, Disney should have probably realized, regardless of prequel nostalgia, Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, that should have been $1 billion movie.
Well, yeah, but also it's like, I do think that, it makes much more sense that Obi-Wan and Darth Vader don't meet again until A New Hope. I kind of like that about the old expanded universe, was that, no, they didn't meet again until A New Hope.
Fair enough, but yeah. Brandon Tran says the whole sequel trilogy had no plan. Even Joe Boyega actor offended an honest rant. He got sidelined and chastened chosen because of his race.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I remember also the fact that he was removed from the poster for the China's release because China doesn't really like people of his color, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate, but
yeah. So
China's very racist.
But due to the fact that I think the Phantom Menace had this sort of better reputation over the years, Disney decided to, you know what, why not we release it for a week to celebrate its 25th anniversary? It made, from my understanding, a few million in the box office, showing that there's still an interest in going to see Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And as a result, let's see, they also, I think, also used it to help perhaps promote their show at the time, The Acolyte, as for those that went to see it in the theater, there's also post-credits where they, let's see, to add a bit of a teaser for The Acolyte, particularly one of its fight scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting, the Phantom Menace does technically have a sort of post-credit thing, sort of teaser thing with Darth Vader's breath.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's not really a post-credit thing, but it's just like, it's just reminding you that, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen to Anakin.
Yeah, so it's like it did something like that. No other Star Wars film has done something like that. Let's see, at the very least, and it remains one of the few films that doesn't do post-credit scenes, unless you're talking about the TV shows. Let's see. Brandon Chan says Obi-Wan Kenobi show should have been good if the director wasn't Deborah Shaw, who worked on Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad spin-off. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I wasn't really a fan of the shaky cam. Speaking of Star Wars content on the Disney era, do you think the new games that have been out, like Battlefront 2, Jedi Fallen Order, and Jedi Survivor and Outlaws, are better than some of the Disney shows? Battlefront 2, Probably not. Outlaws, I've yet to see the story of it. I'm not sure how people.
I don't know. I haven't played Outlaw. I did play. I think was it Survivor or Fallen Order I played, but I don't know.
But I definitely say the Jedi game series done, at the very least, have been regarded as some of the most well-received Star Wars content. So yeah, but yeah, so but yeah, so basically, it's kind of interesting because it's like, let's see, even though it's like a bit shocking that the Phantom Menace is like 25 years old now, showing just how much time has passed, but also the fact that it got a re-release in the cinema, because if you went like let's see, a decade or two earlier, you would not think that would happen.
No.
Let's see. In fact, I think you kind of had like someone like Red Letter Media thinking that the prequel films, particularly the Phantom Menace, would be forgotten and ignored, while the originals will like stand up to the test of time.
Well,
But it seems at the very least, that for at least the time being, the prequels, particularly the Phantom Menace, are still in a bit of discussion. Let's see, at the very least, Star Wars fans for the time being.
time will tell what will happen with the sequels, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll have to see how that Ray movie will do, if it does.
If that gets made, because they're having a hard time getting anything off the ground at this point.
Yeah, now, I do believe we're gonna get like that Mandalorian and Grogu film at the very least.
Oh yeah, but I'm like, if you haven't seen The Mandalorian, who's going to go see it in the theater?
I mean, who knows? I mean, granted, I think the Mandalorian has been one of their big juggernauts, particularly Baby Yoda, from what I can tell.
Why they were like, that's why even though the story kind of ended with season 2, they're like, no, we got to make season 3 and revert it back.
But yeah.
All right.
So I think they'll try and. So that might be their. So I think that's why they're doing that film first, because that duo is iconic. But yeah.
All right. Well, I got to get going. So
yeah, I think we've pretty much gone to the end. We've pretty much talked about everything about its. Let's see, the Phantom Menace. It's let's see, history of like its origins, pre-production, the marketing, fan hype, the backlash, reactions, the change over time, and now let's see, we've pretty much gone to like its re-release there, re-released to 25 years. So arguably, it's a film that, let's see, today is either like, let's see, either fans saying it's a good bad film, or it's a good filmed but flawed, or like I like the vision and the story ideas of it, pretty much. Basically, those are, you more see that at. Granted, you still see some negative reactions towards the film, and some people haven't changed their minds, but at the very least, you got a lot more people being more positive at this film.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to get going. Nice talking to you. We'll do this again soon.
Nice talking Retrospect Greg, and I'll probably see you next time, be it a Star Wars discussion or whatever. Or maybe even One Piece, whatever, or maybe even Transformers, since Transformers 1's coming out.
Yeah, we'll talk.
But anyway, let's see. Okay, Brand, Tran saying honestly, the Jedi games are the best. Star Gun, it's because it's been some good storytelling. Fair enough, but anyway, Brandon Tran, thank you for your time. Glad you had some let's see those comments. I hope you enjoyed what you had to say. But for now, I am Blue Star Saber. Signing off. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. May the force be with you.